is because it's absolutely fundamental to what Jesus taught. As he said, for example, unless a grain of wheat or corn of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it abides alone. But if it dies, it brings forth fruit. Paul said that I came among you not knowing anything except Jesus Christ and him crucified. Essentially, he was a rabbi that had teaching under some of the greatest teachers in Jewish of the day. Gamaliel was a Jewish expert scholar of the Pharisees, and Paul, Saul was his name before he became the Apostle Paul. He was trained underneath Gamaliel. And yet he said, I essentially forgot it all because of the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It's very important to understand that without a death, there is no resurrection. So when we talk about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, it must be because there was a death. Now, why is this so fundamental? Why is this so important for us as a very principle of our life, the center of our being, where that is the guiding factor of our lives? What does that actually mean? How do you go from just saying, "Oh, I believe Jesus died for my," to I am literally living the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ? Well, there's many scriptural examples of this. The probably one of the most prominent, and I speak about this frequently, is the life of Joseph. And the reason this is so prominent is because he had a vision, you could say. He had some dreams as a child, as a boy. 17 years old is what I believe people say, that he was probably about 17. I think actually it says in Scripture he was like 17. That's something I would have to fact check myself on, but I think he was like 17. And when he had these dreams of that essentially he was going to be some sort of a great leader of some kind. I mean, essentially when he saw that the sun and the moon and the stars bowed down to him, he basically was talking about his parents and his brethren were going to bow down to him. And there was probably an element of pride in the fact that he told his dream. Maybe he was naive and just had no idea. But yet, what he did, he triggered a series of events in his life that was going to eventually lead to the fulfillment of that. But it had to get crushed first. And it got crushed by some jealous, angry brothers of his that could not acknowledge, grasp, or fathom that Joseph was, because he was the young kid of the family. They were all older. He was younger, and he told this dream, and essentially they were like, you think you're going to rule over us? Is that what you're trying to tell us? And then they decided to do one of, a very cruel thing, which is to literally sell him as a slave into Egypt through a band of Ishmaelites that long and drawn out. And not only in the process of this, and it went from bad to worse. He was falsely accused. He found favor with a man named Potiphar, and then his wife falsely accused him, and then he ended up in prison for a number of years, and then he was able to interpret a dream for the butcher and the baker, I believe it was, and he interpreted a dream for both of them, and he asked them not to forget him, and yet they did. They forgot him even longer, so he pined away in prison in Egypt, probably not ever thinking much about his vision again for quite some time. He probably came to the point where he had just given up on it. That's the death. Now, Joseph went into a natural progression towards that death And maybe at some point there were glimmers of hope, and then it died again and it got crushed. Here's something that is true from the biblical standpoint. When God calls somebody to something of a, what would you say, a spectacular direction, many times they have to go through a long, drawn out process to come to the point where they are ready to go 100% into God's direction for their life. And so in that regard, that's what we would call emptying ourselves of ourselves. One could say that's what happened to Joseph, because as he pined away in prison, all he could do probably was to think and to muse and to become humbled in that state where he was in. We see that in other people, in the life of David. We see it in the life of multiple people in the Bible, where they went through a long process of a death to what they thought God had said to them, what they thought they were called to, what they thought could be. And then all of a sudden, and I want to say that David, out of those moments of death, came some of the greatest psalms that we have. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. And then here it is. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, O Lord. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. There was this initial thing. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall want for nothing. I shall lack nothing. And then all of a sudden, though I walk through the valley. So there's that element. Now, there's a scripture that I was going to bring about. It's Psalm 127. It actually says, starting at verse 1, unless or except the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain that build it. A watchman waketh but in vain. If it's not the